So one of the themes that I often talk about is what I call shining a light on the middle. So much of the attention of lawyers and the legal community are either on partner profits of the AmLaw 100, the AmLaw 200, and who's what in the rankings, which is really kind of a fascination with big law that services large organizations and incredibly high net worth individuals. So if you have Latham as your family lawyer, you've probably got 9 digits or so to your bank account. On the other side, there's really critical work for those below the poverty line. And I'm actually inspired by a lot of the stuff that I see here and at the ABA, and about some really interesting and clever and innovative work around access to justice for those below the poverty line. But for LegalZoom, the core market that we address is the middle class. So I take the 1%, the top 1% out of it, the bottom 15%, and the 84% in the middle, which is most of our family and friends. And not the big business, but the 99.9% of businesses that have been frozen out of the system, that are more like your corner restaurant, right? And their access to justice has really been problematic. So we've doubled the density of lawyers from 1 in 572 to 1 in 264 over the last 30 odd years. So we have doubled the number of lawyers per capita. At the same time, pro se has gone up in my state of California, 1%. I think in the 70s, 1% of Californians were pro se. Now it's 67% at the beginning of the case and 80% at the end, which if you do the numbers, depending on the year, it looks like a 30 to 40% chance that if you go into a contested divorce with a lawyer, they will suck every liquid dollar out of the system and leave you to defend yourself at the end. So how do you double the supply, right, on a relative basis, and yet decrease access? The pro se goes up 67 to 80 times. Now, Oliver Goodenough, professor out just close by in Vermont, that says actually access to justice, as you're talking about it, is not a bug of our legal system, but the feature. Our system is clearly developed in order to thwart the natural laws of supply and demand and decrease the ability to compete for services. And he has his own kind of thesis around that. But that in some ways explains what's going on. And given that it's a crisis that's growing in nature, we're faced with the question of how do we reverse that trend? That's the core of what LegalZoom does. We're trying to democratize law for really the middle class. And we're in this curious situation where most people in the middle class turn to solo practitioners, the 54,000 solo practitioners in the US. And there, the economics of being a solo practitioner have gotten progressively worse over that same 30 years by a lot of supply and less demand, to the point where the average solo can't afford their own hourly fees. LegalZoom hasn't existed for the last 30 years. The decline in income from 70,000 to 49,000, from 88 to 2012 for the average solo practitioner, that occurred before LegalZoom existed and continued while LegalZoom was even a very small company. When you think about the impact that we could have had over the vast majority of that period, we're a very small player in the scheme of things. So while many people are you see a 30-year decline, you might be able to attribute the last 5 years potentially to what we do, but we're a very small drop in the bucket. So I think the issues that plague the solo practitioner are deep and systemic, and LegalZoom is the least of those issues. In fact, I think we're more of the solution than the problem there. So and this is a good thing to educate folks, because even I think our customers think the same way. We have had 3 chapters in our business at LegalZoom. For our first 10 years, we're really legal document software. So in order to take care of your legal needs, you turn to software similar to TurboTax. What was the catch? There was no lawyer. So it was really positioned ourselves in our early years as an alternative to a lawyer. If you could not afford a lawyer, come to LegalZoom and we can take care of you. In the second chapter, which started around 2010, we began to integrate or add LegalZoom lawyers to LegalZoom. Now, we did that through a vehicle of legal plans. So customers can come to us and we will refer them to third-party lawyers that we pay to service those customers, but they retain their independence. And they're in a legal plan similar to Hyatt Legal or Legal Shield as a personal version of that. And so when we added that, we added lawyers to our equation. Because when you think of LegalZoom, we're just a platform of people and technology. So in the beginning, our technology was document software with, call it legal document specialists and customer care folks. And then in chapter 2, you added lawyers here, and then we began to scheduling and began, not quite into practice management, we'd say, but we added a different suite of technology to help with lawyers. In chapter 3, which is really started last year, we're now looking at integrating lawyers into everything we do. So you'll see some of our practice areas move to 100% attorney delivered, because we believe that is the highest level of quality. We need to integrate lawyers in the front end, not get a document and then talk to a lawyer about it, but rather integrate a lawyer throughout. So a lot of our reimagining and re-engineering of the delivery of legal services today is around how do we incorporate lawyers throughout the process. So that's probably new to many folks. I don't know, we've spent 2 years trying to advertise and get the word out, but I think LegalZoom has evolved in the way we will, and will continue evolving in really reimagining and re-engineering the delivery of legal services. It will be really about this integration. I don't want people to think of, if you really want to solve the problem, right, of democratizing law and this lack of access for those in the middle class as individuals and families and for small business owners, we've got to think bigger. And I believe any solution for the law that doesn't include lawyers is very limited in the potential things they can address and the quality levels they can achieve. And when we talk about democratizing law, it's not to create a substitute for the law or a substitute for the lawyer, right? It's not, hey, let's feed everyone, but if we're carnivorous, there's no meat in that one. No. We need to figure out a way where people can get the highest quality experience, because I'd say right now the average levels of quality that people are experiencing has a lot of room for improvement. And I'd say it can improve both at LegalZoom and with solo practitioners. But what that means is thinking through the customer experience from the eyes of the customer. How many lawyers today don't take a credit card? Now, some will say there's an ethics issue that, Amex and Visa and MasterCard could exercise an undue influence in the practice of law by their 2%. I think most people say that's pretty silly and it doesn't make any sense. And I talked to the ethics committee folks and they said, of course that makes no sense. I said, really? Then why don't you change it? They said, oh, we talk about it. I said, I don't know, in the last 30 years you haven't changed it. So at what point are we actually going to change all these things that are important? Because most legal needs are unexpected. And most middle-class Americans, if you have a $5,000, $2,000, or $10,000 unexpected expense, they don't have the cash to pay for it. And if you don't create, well, either you can become a lender or you can put them on credit cards. So even something that simple is an issue. When we think about what it would take to create access to consistently high quality legal solutions for most Americans, let's just focus on everyone in the US, that is a big task. That's going to require not incremental change, but substantive change. And anytime you think about substantive change, I don't like the word disruption of an industry, but a lot of people like to because it's kind of catchy. But when you think about that, let's fundamentally transform an industry that's a bit broken. I can destroy innovation and disruption if I take two elements away. Number one, capital. Number two, a team, people. So if I looked at where would all the great things that technology or innovation has given to us, whether you love Uber or Apple or Amazon or Netflix, right, or Hulu or whatever it is that you experience in technology or in any disruptive industry over the last 20 years, pick your favorites. If I can take two elements away, none of those would exist today. The legal industry today does not allow law firms to raise capital. It does not allow them to recruit non-lawyers to the cause. So if we want technology-enabled solutions that can create consistently high-quality experiences for customers in very large scale, it will be impossible without those two elements. So I think that's the beginning. I think, second, it's not just about technology. When we think about a solution that can transform an industry, you have to correctly apply technology, that's one element, but you have to actually look at the array of human capital against the solution. So if it's one lawyer doing everything from start to finish, which is commonly how the law is done in the US and around this world, that is not the most efficient way. Using technology, right, designed around a customer experience. Most experiences are designed around the needs of the managing partner of the firm. So how many people will say, how many places do you go to for something that you need? You may not have a choice. But I'd say, hey, you're going to pay an hourly rate, and I will determine the hours, and you will not be able to judge the quality of it. In or you out, that's how I want to deliver 90% of what we do. That's a difficult solution for a lot of folks, particularly when they can't afford it. So we have to think, what is the best customer experience? Do you pick up the phone? Do you have someone dedicated to taking care of the customers because you might be in court? So when you think about from the customer experience out, you would design a solution totally differently than if you're managing it for a partner. I think so. Part of that is the creativity of reimagining it from the customer's perspective. Part of it, arranging the right, I think, diversified skill set of human capital to deliver the solution, and then embracing technology to organize it and make it consistent. And I think that would be a deeper answer to the question of what we need to do. So if I asked 100 people in this hotel, do you have a doctor? I suspect more than 9 out of 10 would be able to name one or more doctors that is their doctor. Now, if I pretended to take 100 people on the street, since the lawyers here would be a messed up sample, and 100 people on the street, I said, how many of you have a lawyer? Who is your lawyer? What percentage of them would say, no idea, or zero? More than 9 out of 10 would not have a go-to? If we can change the assumption that lawyers are only for the uber wealthy and for the large corporations, but that lawyers will help you navigate your daily life, will help you protect your family, will help protect your small business, and that it is natural for you to have one, and then create a delivery system where you can do that at scale and is affordable, that works for the customer and works for the lawyer, then we will have solved this equation. So we are going to work with somewhere between 10 and 30,000 lawyers in the US over the next 5 years. As we integrate lawyers into our process, now we need to look for those lawyers. So we will be looking for a segment of lawyers in New Hampshire. We already have a law firm that services the needs of New Hampshire residents in our legal plan. That law firm needs to grow. The demands that we have based on integrating lawyers throughout our core, not as an option into what we do, but integrated throughout, will radically increase the number of lawyers we need to hit the quality levels that we aspire to. Now, what lawyers would fit? Number one, they are specialized in what they do. So we would like a lawyer that does estate planning to only do estate planning. We don't want a lawyer that does estate planning, divorce, traffic, PI, litigation. We want someone that does one thing exceptionally well, and I would like to give them hundreds or thousands of families that they can service. So they have to be specialized. They have to be willing to be accountable. Every lawyer that works with our clients is reviewed. Every client has the option to review that lawyer on a scale of 1 to 10. We do a net promoter survey. They are habitually surveyed. It creates a rating. You will see where you are relative to your peers. Many lawyers do not like to be rated. That is a condition of working with us. We are accountable to our customer. Our lawyers are accountable. They're not accountable to us. They're accountable to the customers. So we publish and share those reviews openly. One can explain a situation, you cannot erase it. And that is kind of accountability. So I think if you are willing to, if you have a high degree of specialization, you believe that accountability to customers is good for you, and you embrace technology as an enabler for efficiency and quality, then you will likely have a very good place in LegalZoom's. And we'd love to work with you.